So we have a lot of first-time fundraisers, and I am really excited to get you all involved and translate your passion and your knowledge for special education and the work that we do in the community into a broader community. And the more people that we talk to, the more people become aware of our work, and hopefully the more we come in contact to people that can also help support our work. Even if they're not in our room or in our regular circle, we may find that there are lots of people that care about the things that we do and would be happy to listen and hopefully support Seattle Special Education PTSA. We also have a date coming up. We had talked about the Mariners game at our last meeting, and I apologize, I lost the date in front of me. June
16th, I believe it is.
I think that it is the 16th or 17th, and they have a really great giveaway that night. So for all of the early birds, it'll be a special fun evening, and it would just be nice to get together and be in person. And of course, all of you are invited, and everyone you know is invited. It's a nice evening at the ballpark, and with each ticket, we'll be raising a few dollars for Seattle Special Education, and the more the merrier. So we will be doing those, and when we get that position filled with communications, you can read about it in the newsletter, or perhaps we'll send out a special update in the meantime, depending upon how it goes. But for anyone else that was wondering, I know we have open positions, and if you were thinking that one of them might be for you, then we absolutely want to hear from you, because everyone is invited. And hopefully we can get as many voices in these conversations and as much help as possible to help improve things here in the district and help education for our kids. I think I hit most of the points. Sherilyn, was there something else?
No, I think that was it. Well, there was the car wash. I don't know if there had been, if we were going to do that.
We can put it all in the same thing, and that's a really fun one with Brown Bear Car Wash, and you can use it at all of the locations. And I know this has been really successful for the Little League in my neighborhood. And I'm trying to think who else. Someone else's child also sold these. And so I'm sitting on a fair amount of tickets from other organizations, and I will have lots of car washes this year when I purchase some on behalf of Seattle Special Education as well. We live in Seattle, we can use it often.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Laura Marie. I am now going to ask, let's see, to have Devin join me. And Devin, I'm looking for, oh, there. It's like the last, not trying to hide.
Good evening.
Spotlight, I do into Spotlight. Got a few too many things going on. This behind the scenes thing, it's a lot like the Wizard of Oz. And let's also see if we can get our other interpreter spotlight. So, okay, let me do this one thing. Devin, I was actually just going to ask you a few questions. We didn't have a chance to connect prior, but I don't want this to be something that catches you off guard. I just know that some of the feedback we're hearing is it's like it feels like there's an onslaught, or there's the kind of information that comes back, but it's just hard to follow sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, I would actually, what I'd love to know is on the Let's Talk, on the Seattle's website and the Let's Talk, what would be the top 2 things that you guys are seeing, or what would you see from emails in? What are you hearing from parents as the biggest challenge that they're dealing with, and what is a frustration?
So I haven't reviewed the Let's Talk data probably since about January. I'll be honest about that. I do see them come in, and I know our teams are responsive to them. I think, yes, thank you, Yana. So for those of you who don't know, Let's Talk is the venue, the online kind of feedback or questions. It's a place that you can go in Seattle Public Schools and direct questions to various individuals or departments, and the responses and feedback are all tracked. I believe that some of the themes that I've been kind of seeing that we've been helping schools to address have to do with IEP meeting participation. So whether that's making sure that the entire team is present, or that there's a conversation with the family and agreement in advance if there's a plan to excuse some team members. Translation and interpretation does come up, and so we've been addressing that. That is like one of our top priorities in addressing, and we have had some situations come up in the past few years where, you know, when teams want to move on without interpreters, we shut it down, and we have to reschedule it to ensure that there is meaningful and authentic parent participation. And then I would say some of the other Let's Talk topics have just been really around the topic of inclusionary practices and the shift to extended resource. And some of it is asking for more information. There have been some concerns with the merging of the access pathway and the social emotional learning pathway. So those have been some of the things that I've seen. So,
And I'll say that I'll echo, well, pretty much I could support any of those. This is Cheryl Lynn. I forgot to ask us earlier in the meeting to introduce yourself every time you talk. And this helps the ASL interpreters make more clear to people who it is who's talking. The extended resource, it just doesn't feel like, I know there's some information on the website, it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of story around, or the word's getting out. And I believe I talked a little bit about that with you last time, or at least had asked you, you know, in terms of emails. Well, I guess maybe, are there plans?
yes.
Okay.
Okay. So this is Devin, and we have I think I've talked about some of the plans for how our central office staff are supporting out in schools for the transition. So I'm happy to re-explain those if you want. But what I'll say in terms of next steps and updates are that we have the development of a family-facing guide, a staff-facing guide, and that's including principals and then teachers. And so we are in the final stages of working through those, and those will be coming out. We have, I need to get the final data pull, but at this point in time, it doesn't look like there are significant numbers of families who have chosen to shift the school their child attends. And this can be for a number of factors. One I noticed is that there are a fair amount of students receiving these services in option schools. And I know that families feel very passionately about the option schools that they choose for their children to attend. I think the other piece has to do with students who have been part of a school community for several years. So if they're intermediate elementary, then oftentimes changing schools can pose other kinds of, you know, challenges and dealing with change and unexpected things. So there's a few different reasons why I think that there haven't been a lot of shifts. What I do expect to see is that for our kindergarten students and those risers, that as the years progress, we're going to start having initial placements, whether that's risers into kindergarten or students who are newly eligible in elementary school, be able to exercise those options to attend a school closer to or their neighborhood school.
Not quite related to what you're saying. This is Cheryl Lynn.
Sure.
I just shared a YouTube link from a board meeting with Dr. Rocky Torres speaking, that if people want to see it, if you hadn't made it, it's him giving a summary of some of the work. So another way to learn some of this.
Absolutely. And so this is Devin. I'm closely involved with all of those pieces that Dr. Torres was speaking to in the board meeting. I was there for that. So and really this is our core and our passion, is ensuring that students get high quality services and also high access to high quality core instruction to the maximum extent possible. Because we know when students have access to a core instruction taught in the general education environment alongside their peers, the outcomes in terms of achievement, post-school opportunities, meaningful relationships and friendships increase pretty dramatically, right? And so that's something that's really critically important to us, and that's a value that we all hold in our department. As you know, we sometimes we're always striving to be better with our communication efforts and just efforts in general. And so there's a lot of school teams who are ready and super excited to do this. And then I think there's concern, and I'm going to project on this a little bit, but I think fear of the unknown might be a core, function of where some of that is coming from. And so some of the ways that we are working to address that are, we have a extended resource focus group that primarily has our SEL or social emotional teachers and our access teachers. We also have a pretty robust series of professional learning getting ready to launch in this summer in August. And so we are partnering with Washington Education Association, we are partnering with Novak, and we have our in-house team. And so what we're doing is really getting the word out early to schools to encourage our general education partners in this work to come. We're also encouraging our school leaders to bring teams, because we will be focusing specifically on a lot of the instructional and leadership pieces around what meaningful belonging is, what rigor looks like for students, that productive struggle, regardless of where you're at in your learning journey. Infusing the 3 core elements that we are focusing on for inclusionary practices, which include universal design for learning, or UDL. And so that's proactive and planned access points for students in the general education curriculum that allows learner variability to be able to actually have access to rigor, to demonstrate their understanding in ways that work for them, to have dialogue and discourse in ways that work for them, and to also receive the instruction in ways that are really learner focused as opposed to adult focused. Then we also have multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS, which we have been talking about for many, many years in Seattle. And so that is a core piece of how we are going to ensure that high quality core instruction, or tier 1 services, are in place and calibrated, or similar across our system. At this point, we don't have calibration from school to school. One of the opportunities we have in our partnership with the Novak group is that they are doing an MTSS needs assessment for the entire district, where they're looking at our past practices, our past planning and rollout of other MTSS initiatives, they're doing a deep dive into some schools, and they're going to be producing a report for us, likely August or September at this point. I think that's the timeline, where they are going to really help us understand as a system what we're doing well and what specific opportunities we have for improvement. So we're really looking forward to that, to use as an anchor to drive our work for MTSS. And
This is Sherilyn, and Devin, you said that is going to be out in August or September?
I'm predicting August or September is when we're going to get the first draft of the report. So we'll make sure it will be shared widely with the community, and we will be sure to get that out as soon as we go through that process of reviewing, and because they want some of our feedback before we do the final piece, and then we would actually like to do some of our own analysis and recommendations as a district, since this is our work. And so
This is Sherilyn. Yeah, I can see where there'll be a lot of because there'll likely be a lot of questions at the start of the school year or into the school year, and so to have material come out that helps explain and those types of stories will be helpful.
Yes, and the third component of our inclusionary practices is restorative practices. And so that is really culturally affirming, helping with, belonging, and, ensuring there's not disproportionate discipline for students who are BIPOC students, or students with disabilities, or students who have intersectional identities. And so that's some of the support. What I can say is that we have, I think, 7 or 8 of what we're calling early adopter schools, which are schools that are like, yay, we want to start, please pick us. We want to help get the ball rolling with this. And so 2 highlights I'd like to share.
This is Sherilyn. Devin, can you give us the name of those schools?
Yep, I was getting ready to. Yep, absolutely. So this is Devin. Gatewood Elementary and Lowell Elementary are just really running with this, and it's been really fantastic. The principals just spoke at a school leader session last Friday to talk about their experiences with the inclusionary practices early adopter work, and their enthusiasm for it, and how it has started to already shift the hearts and minds and practices in their buildings was contagious. And so there was a request in the chat to let me and Dr. Torres know if principals were interested, and I believe for our early adopter round 2, and so that will be starting in the fall. And I believe I got at least a dozen principals who reached out and said, we are so excited, we want to be part of this. The other piece that I want to share too is that even if your school is not an early adopter school, there are still opportunities for you to learn and take training if you're an educator or a leader in the system, whether they're asynchronous trainings or whether they are, guided book studies. Those are happening as well. And if any of you are on your school PTSAs or BLTs, there's such a timely question here, Yana. Thank you. If the parents and teachers are interested, but the school admins are not, I would say that really connect through your BLT and your PTSA at your building to really ask the questions about, how we can see this more present in our school's vision, mission, and values. Thank you. What I will also share is that when we did our initial list of early adopters, we looked at schools that had a lot of, competing demands, whether they're one of our 13 focus schools for achievement, whether they are one of our schools of promise, Those are the 13 schools. Whether they're part of our 3rd grade reading strategic initiative or our 7th grade math strategic initiative, whether they have levy or grant initiatives going on, because what we're really wanting to ensure happens is that we are not overloading. And so one of the strategies that we have been working on as leadership is that I'm working closely with executive directors Cashel Toner and Caleb Perkins to make sure that these don't seem like separate initiatives, that in fact, if you apply the concepts of UDL into your academic training and learning and curriculum design, that will help amplify outcomes for more students in your building. Let's see.
So this is Sherilyn. So there may actually be schools that are getting some of this initial training or thinking philosophy of UDL that wouldn't be on that list and maybe moving sooner perhaps then in a second or the next round of the rollout. What do you
Correct.
anticipate? What timeline do you anticipate for when you would expect all schools to have adopted the inclusive programming goals?
Thank you for that question. This is Devin. So we haven't set a timeline for full implementation, but there's a specific reason that we are using the term early adopter rather than pilot, because early adopter is the expectation that this is going to be adopted by all of our schools. And so because we are in year 1 of the rollout, which is also mapped to Superintendent Jones' priority initiative around inclusionary practices, we are meeting as a steering committee to look at how we're going to be rolling this out and making recommendations. Because year 1, as you can imagine, hasn't gone exactly as we had mapped it out at the beginning. And so we're really looking this spring at what next year is going to look like. And I believe by mid to late next year, we can have a really clear plan for what it's going to look like for a full district rollout. What I can add to that, however, is that every summer, there is a training for district leaders, specifically building leaders, but we all attend, and it's called SLI, or School Leadership Institute. And it happens in August, and there's always a theme. And so this year's theme is inclusionary practices. And what I've been really excited about is the energy and excitement around inclusionary practices across the board. As we start to socialize concepts, it's important that we hear people talking about it, asking questions, wanting to learn more. And those of you who work in large systems probably know sometimes we have ideas that we really are passionate about, but they compete with other priorities. And sometimes our belief in what needs to be the priority isn't that priority. Inclusionary practices is that priority across all sectors of the system. And so that's something I'm really proud of our team and our system. Does it mean it's perfect right now? Absolutely not. But, we want to focus on small wins. We want to build on the excitement from leaders such as Kina Hogue, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, I know, but Chelsea Dijic from Lowell. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. The enthusiasm of them. Sharonda Williams, Interagency, is one of our early adopter schools. She's been very excited. Really all of the principals have. I can also share that Garfield has started a building-wide book study on UDL Now. And so we just sent copies of UDL Now over for every educator at Garfield. So I think that was over 80 copies. And so that's going to be part of their early release Wednesdays, is doing that book study. So there's a lot of pieces that are moving in really positive directions. And I think the mindset shift and the understanding and making it clear about how this works together with all of these initiatives is really important, to socialize this work, because I think we're all still feeling a little stung by, the results of our efforts in terms of legislative priorities and the outcomes. And I know I have strong feelings of sadness and disappointment, and I can only imagine that this community does as well. So all we can do is keep trying and pushing. And so if we can socialize these movements, then I hope that we can continue to get that momentum for what our students deserve.
That's great. This is Cheryl Lynn. Thank you, Devin. I think we have some questions, but I think I'll just keep them. Did have one comment. I will say that somebody posted the service models are still a barrier to inclusion. So there's a lot of work to go.
Can I share one update?
Okay.
And I'll be fast. I know you have other things to do. So this is Devin. So we, as part of our special education task force with the district and the teachers union, are studying a workload calculator, which our hope and intention is for that to de-silo our services for students. And we are meeting tomorrow with a group from OSPI who is studying workload calculator as a mechanism for teacher retention. So, and then after that meeting, we're going to bring them into our task force to really work with us. So they've offered their services. So thank you for that update. And I agree.
This is Cheryl Lynn. Thank you. Well, that, I know that was part of the CBA or the collective bargaining agreement, the teachers contract. So that's good to hear about. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I'll look for more updates.
Sounds great.
Okay. And
have a good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And with that, I need to move us right on over to our guest host tonight, Jay Kim. And I am I'm looking, so if somebody could pin or spotlight Jay. Jay Kim is with the ARC of King County and is also going to be able to tell us about AAC. She's giving our introduction to augmentative and assistive, augmentative and assistive. I will hand this over to Jay because she'll have the answers. Here you go, Jay. Thank you and welcome. Yes, let me get that set up. I thought we had sharing for you, but I'll set it up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay, a supervisor of information and referral at the ARC of King County, where we support people with disabilities and their families. I have a disability and use a communication device to talk. Because of my disability, I'm passionate about talking to the community about disability. My role is to help individuals to live their lives how they want to. I am really thankful that you want to learn how to support AAC users because it is so important.
If we could move to the next slide. Thank you.
So here is an agenda for today. We are going to introduce the ARC, and then we will learn what AAC is and who uses it. Also, we are going to look at different types of AAC, how each one is different. After that, we will talk about how you can support AAC users. And then our next slide is about how to join inclusive social activities. Lastly, We are going to talk about why AAC is important and then wrap up. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions or comments using the raise hand feature. We would want this to be interactive as possible, but remember to raise your hand first instead of speaking out. Let's get started. So how many of you are familiar with the ARC? Yeah, we are from the ARC of King County, but there is a national ARC and each state has its own ARC. Under state ARC, there are ARC in many counties. All ARCs should have the same mission, that is to support people with intellectual developmental disabilities from all across of lifespan to be successful in community. The ARC was founded by the parents with disabled children 80+ years ago, so it's so focused on their perspective, but we are trying to shift our focus to people with disabilities. We support people all across their lifetime, from prenatal to golden age. Our team, information and referral face-to-face hub of information, we connect parents of children with disabilities so that they can exchange resources and get emotional support from each other. We have many events and workshops where parents or people with disabilities can socialize and learn from each other. We do advocacy work for individuals with disabilities or their families. And people can call us with any questions on disabilities, from how to fill out certain paperwork to whatever you may need help with. Do you have any questions before we move on? Here, does know what is an augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. Yeah, it is an alternative way that someone communicates instead of talking verbally. There is a whole history about AAC, and it was founded in the 1950s and 1960s, but I wouldn't talk more about it today. Basically, AAC is tools, systems, devices, or strategies. AAC allows the person to communicate their needs and wants. People of all ages can use AAC if they have challenges with speaking with their mouth parts. You often see people with intellectual and developmental disabilities like cerebral palsy or autism using AAC. Some people use it all day like me, and some people have AAC and speak verbally sometimes if they have some verbal skills.
I'm so sorry. This is one of the sign language interpreters. I am having a very hard time understanding this recording. It's unintelligible to me. I apologize.
I'm really sorry. By the way, I'm Kyle. I'm an intern at the Arc of King County. So I'm very sorry about the difficulties you're having with intelligible. Yeah, yes, I was just about to ask about that, if it would be possible for us to turn up volume.
This is Sherilyn. We're asking if Jay can turn up the volume on the AAC. Is that correct? Oh, great. Thank you.
AAC can be many forms of communication, especially today with all the technology and resources we have. You can't get an AAC device overnight because it is a long process. You would need to get evaluated by a speech therapist on your needs and then work with our insurance company or Developmental Disabilities Administration to get your device paid. And then you need to set it up. It sounds like a tiring process, but it is really cool when you figure it all out. Do you have any questions before moving on?
This is Cheryl Lynn. Just checking in. It sounds louder and maybe a little more clear to me. Is this better for ASL?
Yes, it's better with headphones. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
There are many forms of communicating, and it would look different based on the person's needs. A communication device is a called AAC device, which is high-tech. High-tech AAC is an electronic device that permits the storage and retrieval of messages, many of which allow the use of speech output. It is basically like mine. It reads a message out loud after we type words or press icons on the screen. It also can be an iPad, Switch, etc. And some people might use their fingers or other tools like joystick, Switch, iPoint, etc. to control it. Some people might use their picture books and or charts, which is low tech. Low-tech AAC means any sort of communication method that is not electronic. It can be a pen on a piece of paper or a flip book with pages. Many people who use low-tech also use other types of AAC. I think everyone uses body language throughout their day. Body language is a type of communication in which physical behaviors and use our body to communicate. Such behavior includes facial expression, body posture, gestures, eye movement, or touch. For example, I nod and shake my head to indicate yes or no when people ask me simple questions. Or I might look at my bag to let someone know that I need something out of my bag. This is a good option when you don't have other options available. Some people point to items, letters, etc. to communicate their needs. For example, I also wasn't given a communication device until the age of 16, and I needed to point to each letter on a tray board. And people guessed after a few letters what I was saying. Or you might say to the person to point to your right hand. If they want white milk, and point to your left hand for chocolate milk. You can narrow the category down if it isn't simple as white or chocolate milk. Like saying the hamburger or pizza. Cheese or regular burger, cheese or veggie pizza. Also, you can use the multiple choice approach with options A, B, C, and D being something else. You can ask each question one at a time. This approach also can be good when someone cannot speak verbally and there isn't another way to communicate. However, remember that you might not always provide a choice that the person is looking for. For my former physical therapist adjusted my walker and he put me in it to try. After walking down through the hall, I gave him a look that something felt not right. Then he used multiple choice approach where it felt not right and he probably asked me 50 questions before running to get my device. The point is not to keep going if you don't get anywhere and find another way. Again, there are many forms of communicating and it would look different based on the person's needs. Do you have any questions before moving on?
This is Cheryl Lynn. It's just interesting, Jay, to hear that you are still working with people in terms of how to figure out working together.
Being an AAC user feels like you are in a room with people who speak another language than you, so no one else understands you. Applying those tips would help both you and your loved ones. First of most, be patient when talking to AAC users. The world is not built for us to use our devices, and most people would not be comfortable waiting for us to type on our screen. For example, when I was in school, the specialist counted how many words I could type in a minute and tried to make me type faster. They believed that I should communicate fast like everyone who talks verbally because it is not normal for people to wait for me to type. But we have a right to say our feelings or thoughts. Plan for more time than usual. If someone who uses an AAC requires more time to talk and you only offer them 5 minutes, it will frustrate you and the person. It wouldn't go anywhere. Be sure to let people know to allow time when they communicate with your loved ones. I know that we all live in a society where everything is about time, but being patient will help in the end. When someone doesn't speak verbally, other people usually think the person doesn't know anything or they can't make correct decisions. For example, people usually baby talk to me because they think I'm a child. This makes me want to run over them with my wheelchair. They see my disability instead of seeing me as a person, or they talk to other people around me even though they're asking about me. It feels like I'm invisible, and it really frustrates me. Also, people often ask other people around me if I can understand the conversation, which makes me so angry. And I think it's rude to ask that question in front of the person. Always remember to treat AAC users as their age and talk directly to them. Being nonverbal doesn't make anyone a baby or special. AAC users are the same as everyone else. You can tell people that they can talk directly to your loved one. Also, many AAC users aren't allowed to use that or sexual words because non-disabled people believe that people with disabilities shouldn't know those words. Of course, anyone should use appropriate words, but we all have a right to know and speak those things if we're old enough. Also, it would be much more safer if people with disabilities know and have access to that or sexual words. Then they can communicate and get support if something bad happens to them. People who are in charge often take the individual's communication device away as a punishment. The person might not listen to you or play around on their iPad. However, it is not appropriate to take their device away because it is basically like putting a tape over your mouth, which should never happen. It is very dangerous too, because they wouldn't be able to express their needs if they have a medical problem. And disabled people might also have other medical issues. It would be scary to me if I had no way to communicate when I really need to. You shouldn't take AAC devices away from anyone for any reason. Having an AAC device is the same as using your voice. Know that AAC devices can stop working anytime and anywhere, just like any other technology. You should always have an alternative way for AAC users to communicate for that reason. The person may have a low-tech AAC with them when something happens. Or you can use one of the approaches that we have talked about on the previous slide. My communication device had stopped working a few times during college class and in the middle of nowhere. I needed to point to each letter to get through my day. And it usually takes some time to get an AAC device fixed because it often needs to be shipped to another state where it was made and shipped back. Your loved one might have to live without their device for a while, so figuring another way out for them to speak during that period of time would be helpful. Even though people know that I'm not able to talk on the phone, they usually call my mom asking to speak with me. Even if we remind them that it is impossible, they still say they must talk to me, since I am my own guardian. This drives me crazy because professionals who work with disabled people even do this. They say it can't be done over email due to security reasons. I am like we do everything by email or online, so what is the difference? If someone needs to talk to your loved one and they are nonverbal, ask if they can do it over email. You also can see if they can do the virtual meeting where your loved one can use their AAC and speak. If your loved one is invited to a panel discussion or any discussion type of activity, ask the event organizer if they can send your loved one a list of the questions in advance you would be asking so that they can type their answers in their device. It takes longer for AAC users to type their responses on a panel, and any panel-style event has a time limit. It would be very helpful if your loved one gets the list ahead of time, and it makes it easier on them. It allows them to express all their thoughts without being rushed. Also, this would benefit everyone, not just AAC users. Similarly, program vocab words in your loved one's AAC device if they are going to an event and you know what people they would talk about. For example, the event is about cooking. Think of some words relating to cooking and program those in. I'm not saying that we should tell your loved one what to say, but support them so that they can enjoy the event and have fun. Be aware that everyone is different and prefers different things. For example, I like other people to guess what I'm saying after typing a few words. It saves my energy and it goes faster because I am not a patient person, although I tell you to be patient. However, other AAC users might not like it when you guess their thoughts and think it is annoying. It can be disrespectful to some people. Just like whether you like to use your hands or not when talking to others. If you are supporting them and unsure of something, you can ask. Don't assume, and it is better to ask. Any thoughts or questions on this slide?
Really quick, I just wanted to direct some attention to a question Ashley just shared about resources for AAC children. Cass is going to be our next speaker, and she just provided a great resource, but I was just wondering, Jay, did you have any other resources you wanted to share? Okay, thank you.
Here are a few things that I thought are important to keep in mind when your family is going to social and recreational events. It is important to find a recreational activity that your whole family would be interested in, and it would be access to your loved one. I remember we used to go to places like Pacific Science Center when I was young. Think about what you all would like to do as a family and have fun. Your loved one might have hikes, low tech, or both, so it is important not to do activities near or in the water. High-tech AAC involves electronics and requires batteries, and it is dangerous for everyone if an AAC user brings their device into the water. It is fine to go near the water if no one splashes the water or the AAC user doesn't go into the water with it. AAC devices are also expensive, and it takes a long time to repair it. If you plan to go swimming or something, bring an alternative communication so that they still can have fun with you. They should always have a way to communicate, so please be mindful of this. Like your cell phone or laptop, it is difficult for an AAC user and you to read their device screen in the sunlight. A couple of times people asked me questions out in the field when it was sunny, and I couldn't tell them that I couldn't see my screen. It took some time for them to figure this out, and then we went inside. It was frustrating for both of us. If you're going to do an activity outside, bring a tent or make sure there is a shed for AAC users. Or bring their low-tech AAC as an option. Because of the last two reasons, you should have low-tech AAC available as an option. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. You can have a letter board, flip book, or use one of the approaches we talked about earlier. Also, it would be helpful when someone's device suddenly breaks down and they don't have other options. It would make it easier for them to get through the day. Modify so that everyone can enjoy the activity. For example, when your family play Jeopardy or trivia, have everyone raise their hand or write their answer instead of shouting out. Or when you play a game that involves speed, either expand the time limit or get rid of it so that everyone can enjoy the activity. It doesn't affect others, and everyone can still have fun together. In the beginning of the presentation, I asked you to raise your hand if you have a question or comment. I asked because I wanted you to practice it and do it. Lastly, be flexible when you plan and do an activity. In the disability world, you always need to be flexible. I believe that a rule of activity or game can change as long as someone doesn't cheat to win.
Ugh.
As an AAC user, I believe that it's so important to have an AAC, whether it's high-tech or low-tech. Of course, you can speak for your loved ones, but it's not their own voice. It doesn't matter if they're using their mouth part or not. It is still their own words. It allows your loved one to make choices instead of you doing what is right for them. We are making choices every second, like how to take a bite of your pizza. Your loved one should decide what they would like to do. This teaches them how to be independent. I know it is hard for parents, but it is their life and have to take responsibility. Having an AAC also allows your loved one to socialize and communicate with other people. Everyone should hang out with their friends and other people than their parents. They might want to chat with their friends. As they grow up, they will have a new life, and you can't always be there when they need something. Also, as they get older, they have more to say. It's not about white or chocolate milk anymore. It is about their life, goals, future, etc. that they would have to say on their AAC. Those things cannot be a yes or no answer. Do you have any questions or comments on the slide or any other previous slides? It takes a lot of effort and patience to learn about AAC or be an AAC user. I even would like to throw my device sometimes because it frustrates me. If you rush things, it would frustrate everyone, so just be patient. After you get familiar with the device, you would be amazed at what it can do. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to contact us with any questions.
This is Cheryl Lynn. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. From the words of warning about keeping devices safe from the water to making sure that I stay out of the way of your wheelchair when you are frustrated. I so appreciate that. Now we're going to, so thank you, Jay and the Arc of King County. And now I'm going to introduce Cass Griffin Bennett, who is a mom. I'll let her tell her story about bringing AAC into her family's home when her daughter was quite young. Thanks, Cass.
Hi, folks. So I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. Let's see if we can make this happen. And okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Of course, all the Zoom things are hiding my, okay. My name is Cass Griffin Bennett, and I am going to talk about early robust high-tech AAC, toddler AAC. What do you mean starting AAC at age 2? Is basically what I got asked a lot along this journey. So who am I? My name is Cass Griffin Bennett. I am just a mom, disclaimer. I am autistic myself. I am ADHD. I have 2 daughters who are autistic. They are currently 6 and 4. And our youngest is primarily non-speaking. My why is that we actually rented the film This Is Not About Me, which I would love it if somebody could link that in the comments. But right around the time that my youngest was diagnosed, it came out. And that was very lucky timing in retrospect. And it showed the sort of the path I could see playing out for our daughter without robust communication. And so I was determined that she was going to enter school district services with her own device, because I did not want it to be gatekept from her by the school district. Now, that said, I didn't have any expectations about what would actually happen when we got that device. Because I was not yet really a believer that toddler AAC could be a thing, right? It was purely sort of a harm reduction preventative measure in my mind, so that it would have to be built into her IEP from the get-go. That was my why. Are we still recording? Can someone tell me? If we are,